Today is October 11th, 2019, and I'm here with Ralph Kula to discuss his time in the service. Ralph, do you remember going into basic training?
Oh, yes.
What was that like?
I'd never been really away from home, and that was a little bit of hell on earth. It was difficult, and it pushed you, and you didn't realize how far you could push yourself until you were exposed to that.
And how were you chosen to go to the Signal Corps?
Because I had a radio background. I went to school right after high school. I went to the National Radio TV School. And they were, at that time, Eisenhower was the president, and because of the Korean conflict, and just not too prior to that, not too long, they had the Second World War. So the country was economically cheapened or weakened or whatever you want to say, and they didn't send me to military radio TV. They took advantage that I went to the radio TV at my own in private life. So this way they didn't have to pay for me. I would have been in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey otherwise. This way I just joined that company when I got TDY'd somewhere else.
Okay. Where was your first base after basic training?
Fort Huachuca, Arizona. And that's in southern Arizona. It's still in existence. I don't know what they're doing there now, though, as far as it was a testing ground for communications.
And your job title at that time?
My MOS was 293, and I think it was a technical, I'd have to look on the paperwork. I'll give it to you later maybe. But it's something technical with radio and transmission and receiving devices. And we operated later on, as we went through, we operated actually a radio station, a military radio station. And it was, we dealt with CONARC, which is abbreviation for Continental Army Command. And it was a pretty secret and serious part of the Army. All of the important details in the United States came across there. And that's probably why we had to have the secret clearance.
So what was your job?
To maintain the radio.
So what did that entail? Like when you went in during the day?
We had generators, because if you're out in the field you don't have electricity. So we had electric generators, and we had a switch. We had 2 generators on a trailer, and you could run them for 4 hours, and then you shut it down and started the other one. And then we'd have to pick up the radio. I forget what the frequency of checking it was, but I think it was about every half hour you'd have to just pick up and make sure that the transmission's okay. And they had little devices on there. 5 would be perfect for clarity and for audio. And so you would give a check on it, and you'd say, this is a private PFC Kula or something checking in on, well, I don't remember what our title of our station was at any one time, but you would say it's 3 by 5, 3 being that would be midway on clarity, but it was 5 on volume. It was a very strong signal, but the clarity wasn't good, or something like that. And you jot that down, so then if there was any difficulty, you didn't check that? No. It's like a nurse checking a patient in a hospital, maybe, or something like that. And that was, and then if there was a problem, you try to deal with it.
So were you maintaining open communication lines?
Yes.
That what your job was? You were on. Someone had to be there all the time. And
yes.
People were communicating from where? Who were you connecting?
We would go down. Well, I'd have to get further into the detail. But like when we had the one assignment and we were in Nevada, we would have one station would be on a mountaintop overlooking what was taking place, and another would be back at Camp Desert Rock, they called it. And a camp is a temporary settlement for the military. A fort is a permanent one. A fort can be open or closed only with the act of Congress. A camp can be set up temporarily anywhere, and that's just so you got a place to shower, a mess hall to eat, and all that stuff. And we'd have the other one down at Camp Desert Rock, and that's right by Mercury, Nevada. Mercury's actually the name of a town, and I don't know if it's still there or whatever, but they would have the one station there, and then Conart would take it off of there or whatever they had and send it wherever to Washington or wherever else it was necessary, whatever information they were dealing with.
So that communication was all in the United States?
Yes.
What you were...
That's Continental Army Command, right? It was the command of whatever's going on over here. And so it was kind of pretty important, you know. I mean, you're 20 years old and you don't realize sometimes. I don't know, when I was 20, I was 13, I think. And you kind of really don't realize at the time the importance of some of the stuff you're doing. So, it's pretty important. That's why we're here yet, I guess, huh?
So were you able to hear some of the communication, or you just monitored the level of transmission?
Basically, we just monitored the level, but quite frankly, there were times when we didn't know what the schedule was going to be like. And so we did cheat a little bit, I guess you could call it, but we were looking out for our own safety. But we could, if there were a bomb or something going off, some type of test going off, we would try to find out we wouldn't even know what time it was. And again, I'm referring to atom bomb blasts now. I don't know, it hasn't been mentioned yet here. But when they had there was one bomb we had there, and I won't get into great detail right now, but it was an underground blast. They didn't even have it on the schedule. And it was like, what if it's on the mountain we're on? You know, because we were way up, we were pretty high. We were up maybe 10, 11,000 feet in the air. It's looking like you'd be at the stadium, the old stadium, watching a football game, or in any stadium. Only this stadium is like maybe 20 miles long and 5 miles wide. So that's why it's hard to judge the distance of where you are. Because I'm from Cleveland. We don't have mountains here, you know. It's a whole different adaptation that you got to go through. But yeah, there was some things that were done there that were not what I would consider proper. Mm-hmm. But again, it was tests and it was people filling in the roles and trying to do things that they had never been exposed to either, probably.
What was your unit called?
93rd Signal Battalion. That's out of Fort Huachuca. When you see your first explosion, wow, your brain has no reference. You never saw anything like that, you know. And
did you know it was going to happen? Tell me a little bit about the lead up.
So we went there, our little group of 40 guys took a couple of trucks with us. The reason they wanted us there is we had the radio equipment and at Fort Huachuca, and we had a sign for it. It was our responsibility, you know, which kind of, I was 20 years old, that's all I'm going to say. I was 13 going on 20. Mm-hmm. And so you know, we signed for it, and part of us thought it was going to be a lark, a little bit, and it turned out that sometimes it was. You'd have Las Vegas at night, atom bombs in the morning. What the hell else is there in the world? What do you want to look forward to? And Vegas back then was just up and growing. That was when, I don't know if you ever heard of the Rat Pack used to hang around there with Sinatra and a bunch of others, Sammy Davis Jr. and all that. And it was just growing into its own. There was like 48,000 people in Las Vegas. I think there's 3.5 million there now. Slight growth pattern. So we didn't know what we were headed for. And I remember going there the first time. We ended up at the Camp Desert Rock. And they said, a couple of days we were there, we're going to be a bomb. And I think it was at the end of May or the beginning of June of 57. This was 1957. And so they stood us in formation, and say the bomb was being blown off there, they gave everybody an about face. So you'd face the other way. And they said, don't turn around. And all of a sudden this big blast comes. We were pretty far away at that time, maybe 20 miles, because I wasn't on the flats for the first one. We were just getting indoctrinated to what to do, what to look for, and all that stuff. In time we were on the flats, but when that thing went off, you could feel the heat. And we were like 20 miles away. And the brightness was so great, if you would be facing it, you probably wouldn't be seeing after that, you know. And there was no glasses, no cover. And we were told, you'd never, the worst thing you got to worry about is the gamma rays and everything that comes out of an atom bomb, because with gamma rays, I guess it penetrates almost anything, and it messes up your, the makeup of you, and DNA. It louses up your DNA, and if it doesn't do you, it can do your people that follow your children, or something like that. And they said, cover yourself with your poncho. You know what a poncho is? It's a military raincoat or a piece of rag. It's like water repellent. And later on, I thought, what the hell were they telling us? Cover yourself with it. What's that going to do? That would be like in the Second World War. We used to hide under the desks when they had a bomb raid at school. What's that little wooden desk going to do? You know, what's going to, and that was regular bombs. But then we went out, we set up our station up on a mountaintop. That was pretty interesting. I've never been 10,000 feet up in the air doing construction work, but we set it up, and then we saw, I remember seeing the first couple of bombs face to face, I'll say, and that was scary. I'm no hero. And I don't, after the bombs anyway, I don't get frightened by anything, because what's bigger than that? But you get scared. And you face the other way, and then I learned you don't just stand and face the other way. We were so close, you had to lay down, because if you weren't laying down on your own, the bomb will make sure you're laying down, because you get a rush of ground wave at you. And that's the thing, that the brightness is instant. The ground wave is the sound that travels. And that would come maybe a minute later or something, couple minutes later. And the dust would come, the ground would actually convolute, like almost like a mild wave on Lake Erie here or something. And then your truck is up there on a mountain, and it's not in a big patch of ground, level ground. And you're thinking, what if that darn thing turns over on me? Because you don't know, is more going to come, or is that it, or what, And so you don't get used to it, but you know what to expect after a while. And when that big one went off, on July 5th, 1957, and it turned out later on when it became public domain, as far as the information, or some of the information, that was a HBomb, and it's a two-stage bomb. They use an atom bomb to trigger the HBomb, the hydrogen bomb. They got to get the temperature up that high. And when an atom bomb goes off, the temperature at the point of explosion is 3 million degrees Fahrenheit. And we used to turn around, and they didn't have trees like over here. If they did, it would be a mess. But they had like little scrubby bushes, yucca plants. And they were miles behind us. The bomb was like over there. They would start on fire. And look at that bush is on fire, Say, what the? And you would feel the heat. I mean, if you would have had that heat for any extended period of time, you would have probably burnt, some third-degree burns or something. And then they kept trying. Probably the worst problem we had there was they once had a underground blast. There was one underground blast during my series. And what they did is they used to do a lot of silver mining in that area prior to all that junk going on. And they would take the shaft of a mine and stuff a bomb down there, and then they'd cap it with dirt and all that stuff. And they would, explode it, of course, and see, can they contain the bomb underground or can't they? At what level? Because the bombs are different sizes. They would go from like 20,000 tons of TNT to the big one was like 80,000. And that big one, by the way, blew cracked windows in Los Angeles, which was 330 miles away. Well, I got a paper somewhere. I had a newspaper from Las Vegas that that's what happened. But this underground one went, and it never rained there, and that's one of the reasons they had to test. So we were up in the mountains, and it was at midnight. That was the only midnight explosion we had. They were always done at pre-dawn. And the bomb went off. At least the countdown went off. And did you feel anything? No, I didn't feel nothing. Did you? You know, there was 4 of us again on the station. And says, well, it must be done, I guess. I mean, unless they had a dud, and some dud can be very dangerous because they can go off any time. And they did have one dud while I was there, but that was a different shot. And I think it was called Diablo, which was properly named. And so it was, it was pretty, it's hot there. In the nighttime, it gets pretty cool, but you're still pretty warm. And there's a lot of scorpions in there and little sidewinder snakes. So I set myself up with 4 gas cans, took the end of the trailer gate, laid it on top of the cans so that the little buggers wouldn't mess with you too much. If they do, they do. And I went to sleep, and all of a sudden I wake up, I hear this big noise and lightning. And you're right there with the lightning because in the rain clouds, you know, lightning's right there. And I'm not afraid of the lightning, but it's not a comfortable feeling, you know. And then it started pouring. Gee whiz, it never rains here. And it rained for an underground blast. Well, the worst thing that happened was it shook the earth, put it airborne, and the rain brought it right down on us. And I said, man, I didn't think of all this till we went to the decon center. But after that, it was like, I'm going in the truck, and I'll sleep in the truck. About 4 o'clock in the morning, because this happened at midnight, I hear a truck, and you can hear for miles on the desert. And there's no lights, there's no street lights there. There's, if you get starlight or moon, that's the only thing. And this truck is roaring up the mountain, because the mountain's pretty steep. And you could see his muffler and everything. It was white hot, I mean, blazing hot. And they're yelling with improper military language, but they were yelling, we got to get out of here. And I knew who was driving the truck. He was actually from Nevada. He's a good kid, a young kid. And I thought, son of a gun, so-and-so is probably drunk. He probably went out and got it drunk, and he's acting crazy. He comes up and he says, the whole flats have been evacuated, and they forgot about you guys. And how could you forget when you're on assignment? You know, I would think somebody, the sergeant, the corporal, whoever's in charge of personnel. So 4 of us were left there. So they said, we got to get out of here. So we jumped in the back of the truck after we believed him, because for a while I didn't believe him myself. And the truck's going down the mountain. I thought, you know, if the radioactivity don't get us, he's going to kill us. But we made it down the mountain, down to the flats, and once we got there, we went to a decon station, a decontamination. They had a military one, and they had because the bomb tests were run by civilians, Atomic Energy Commission, not by the military. The military requested permission to take part in the tests so they could put their troops up there and prepare them mentally and all that stuff. So we stopped at the military decon, and the guy took out the Geiger counter, and they measure, I think, in Roentgens, I think it's the proper term, and they put it on our hair, and the needle went boing. And I didn't know nothing about Roentgens or anything like that. I didn't take anything like that in school, and I don't even know if they had that. They were just testing this stuff. And he said, just wait a minute. So he went back and he got a larger meter. Well, then it went a little bit past middle. But all you're saying is you're loaded. So he says, I want you guys to go to a shower, but don't go to the military one. Go to the civilian one. It's more of a permanent established one. The showers are better and everything. And he gave us soap. And it was probably ivory soap. I don't know what it was. And he said, just scrub, throw your clothes in a pile, we'll take care of that. Yeah, they wanted to burn them so nobody would find them probably, or whatever they do with that, bury them, I guess. And so then, I'm thinking to myself, man, what are you going to do now? Blood transfusions for the rest of your life? Or are you going to live, to begin with? But somehow we bailed out of it. But I know not a lot, I would guess, of the 550,000 people I heard over the 12-year period that partook in that, that's both civilians and military, I heard about 5 years ago that there's 50,000 of us left right now, so it's probably more like about 30,000. And part of that is age, natural attrition, but part of it is it accelerated the process. There was a high incidence of leukemia for the guys who served over there, and women too, but it was mostly guys. But I know they show you pictures. Sometimes you watch the History Channel, and they'll have something about this, or this is just to prove something, or explaining something else, and they'll show people sitting in a bleachers a distance away with goggles, and no. If you would have put your hands in front of your face, you'd see your bones in your finger, So that was kind of an interesting part of my life. There were other occurrences, maybe not as dramatic as the one in the ground and the big one that I saw, but there was a dud, and I remember, and I think it was Diablo, and we had a countdown. What they would do was count down by 5 minutes, and when you get to the last minute, they'd count down by 5 seconds. And then when you get to the last 30 seconds, they'd count down. So you get a little anxious, and all that. And they would go 29, 28, they go 5, 4, 3, 2, and then 1, and then it's like, what's going to happen by then, but you don't know what's going to happen. And nothing happened. So you don't know whether to turn around, because if you face it and it goes off, you get blinded, some permanently, or at least for a part of the time, burns a lens in your eye. And so we didn't know what happened. So then after a while, I guess you could hear over the loudspeakers, please don't move, stay where you are. There's been a misfire, I think they called it, or something. I don't think they used the term dud. Anyway, what they had is a loaded bomb. Somehow the trigger or whatever the device they used didn't improperly worked. And as it turned out, I have a paper for that, or I had one. I've moved a few times and things get lost. But 3 scientists climbed the 750-foot tower, not knowing if the bomb was going off at the time. And then they had to climb, disarm it, of course, and then climb down. Once you're climbing down, you hope you cut the right wire or something. But can you imagine that? And they used to have shots on the towers. And they were as tall as like the Terminal Tower downtown. That's about 702 feet or something. And then they would have airdrops too. And they would drop them by parachute. And when they would hit a certain height, in case you want to drop an atom bomb, the perfect height for dropping them, at least back then, was like 700 feet above ground. So if you ever want to do that, make sure you drop it. But 700 feet, they say, because if you let it hit the ground, you waste a lot of the energy because it's laying up against the ground. It'll blow a dish out of the ground, but it's not doing anything. So they want to get the maximum effort out of it, right? Okay. But anyway, that was pretty much what happened there. And
So was your job to be there so
the radio,
communication can...
especially when the bombs were just after a bomb, especially because they would have meters and devices that would be monitored, and they would need the information back at headquarters. So that was the prime. Even if the radio gave you a little bit of problem, the station wasn't operating. If it was, sometimes you had 2, 3, 5 days between a bomb. Sometimes they would go back to back. You didn't know. But I was there for roughly, I'll just say 3 months. And I was there for like 19 blasts. So you divide 19 into 90 days and you probably get about once every 5 days or something like that, 4.5 days. But
And how far were you from the bombs?
the closest I was, and that's on our measurement, not theirs, because they wouldn't tell us anyway, probably. As close as 6 miles. And that seems like a lot, but believe me, yeah, the farthest I was, I think, on a face-to-face was maybe 20. And that seems like a lot, because that would take you pretty much to Akron from here. But the column of the mushroom is like at least a half a mile in diameter, maybe a mile, depending on how big they loaded the bomb up. They used to load them up a lot. They would do ones that are just explosions, minimal amount of radioactivity. They would do little ones that are, you just want to dirty up the place, so you're going to load it up with radioactivity, but you don't want to explode the structures. So they could play little games. They would build houses there. So that house you see, I believe it was built when I was there. No, not there now, I'm sorry.
I see.
On the TV program, sometimes they use it as a highlight or something. They would put live sheep, live pigs, little farm animals, and they would put them in pens over there. They would use crash dummies and put them in cars and park a car right by the house. They would have crash dummies inside the house, and then they would explode the bomb. But I guess they would put them at varying distances, but if you put it too close to the bomb, while you're building the house, it evaporates. If a human being is close enough, like at ground zero, there's no trace of you at all. No teeth, no bones, no nothing. It's gone. And there was another thing I heard. I don't really know if this is an old wives' tale or something, a rumor, but they had done an underground blast, and I don't think it was the one when I was there. And they did an underground blast, and they put it on a mine shaft. The mine shaft's pretty large. They have a vertical shaft and then a horizontal shaft. And this would be for letting out gases and all that. And then they would truck or, pull the little railroad car with the ore in there, bring it outside on the horizontal. Well, I think they used one of the mine shafts. It was already dug out, and they're pretty big. I mean, they're probably 10 feet square. And they put a bomb in there and they capped it with a lead, like a cover, and covered it with dirt and what have you. And they let the bomb go off, and the lid blew off. And they said it went so far that they couldn't locate it. They think it went into orbit, and it's floating around there now. That at 32,000 miles an hour it was going. And they can't find it, and they have tracking devices. I mean, they have all kind of stuff up there now. But isn't that amazing? The power? When you're talking a pound of dynamite here would blow this whole room up. We'd be in sorry shape. And here you're talking about 50 tons of, a ton is 2,000 pounds. And then you're talking 50,000 ton and a lot of the bombs, the average bomb there probably is about 40. They went lower, they went higher. They had an air-to-air missile. They had a plane shooting a missile. Something you'd probably be familiar with, but to me it looked more like a fighter plane, and it was a fractional bomb. It wasn't like a loaded bomb. But they were trying, I think it was like a rocket maybe, a rocket A-bomb. But they tried a lot of things while I was there. I imagine they did after that too. But yeah, the big thing in my time in the service was probably dominated by the atom bomb tests in 1957, and that was Operation Plumbbob. And for anybody who wants to, they can look it up. It's open material now, and possibly my memory is a little bit obscured. That's about 60 years ago, but I think I remember some of that stuff. It's kind of a pun, but it kind of burns into your memory in more ways than one.
Did you know what they were going to call it when you were there? Did it have?
Yeah, it was Operation Plumbbob. The whole operation was called Plumbbob. Each individual bomb had a different name to it. And I carry in my wallet a list of them of when I was there, just to give you different names. But I believe, yeah, it's right here. It's scribbled on here. So, and I have the date that they were there, which some of them were like Boltzmann, Franklin, Nasson, Wilson, Priscilla, Colomb, Hood, Diablo, there's Diablo, John, Kepler, Owen, Pascal, Stokes, Saturn, and it goes on. And then I just copied them off. Actually, I copied them off of my phone, and it says the date that they went off and stuff like that. Hood was the one that was the HBomb, H-O-O-D, Hood. But these are the list of the bombs that I was there for, and 10 of them I called it up front and personal because I was there, right there. The other ones I might have been back at the camp, so you were a little bit of a distance, maybe a little mountain in between you or something, because I'm sure they wouldn't have built that camp in harm's way, so they'd have to rebuild it after every bomb or something. But yeah, that was pretty interesting. The one that probably scared me the most was the H-bomb. And then the next day we went into Vegas, and I think we got a paper and it was headlines there. Three hero scientists or scientist heroes or something disarm dud, whatever. And that must have been, oh my God. I bet you those guys got gray hair right there. I just can't fan them. And see, they used to have elevators on the towers when they were placing the bomb and all that. But then, because of the cost factor, every time a bomb went off, they would disable the elevator, take it apart to use on another one, so you just had the structure there. And it was like, it's like when they have the high tension wires, the wires with the big towers, only those are about 200 feet, go up 700 feet on a windy desert floor. Ouch. Heights would have bothered me there. I'd probably crawl up, but I'd never get down. I'd have to fall down. And they had, like we talked about before, they would bring in like 5,000 Marines. And they would put them in a trench, a dugout. They'd let a bomb go, but they would be there only for one bomb. And then they would take them out. But like for us, we were more like support group, I guess you'd call. Air Force is a support group, Navy is a support group. And they would bring you in for the duration. What they told us that there's 3 serious things from an atom bomb. Of course, radioactivity would be one of them, probably the most serious, because, yeah, you can't smell it or see it or taste it, and that's why it's serious. And then the explosion, the ground wave that comes, that's all the sound. The sound is deafening. Oh my God, it's deafening. At the atom bombs, we had one big guy. He's a nice kid, He wasn't a super friend of mine, but I knew him pretty well. And when maybe the third Fort bomb went off, he used to try to outrun the ground wave. And sound travels at what, 700 miles an hour or something. And I don't think you're going to make it. I don't care if you're fast, if you were on your track team. And they had to transfer him. He suffered a nervous breakdown. Not from injury, just from mental stress. So I would imagine there were others that followed that pattern. There should be an area somewhere to say the atomic testing, the forgotten whatever exercises, because no one knows about it. You go to the VA or something, I talk to people, and they says, oh, you saw the atom bomb, were you in Japan?
Yeah.
They think they're 2 bombs, that's it. Hell, they were blowing bombs. I think they blew about 900 bombs in that period of time. A lot of them were in the ocean, out by those islands over there where they had to evacuate the people. Those are H-bombs. With the bombs, there's nothing I can tell you. I could describe it to you for a week. I wouldn't get you any closer to a bomb than if you saw it yourself. It's beyond expression, I guess. At least my vocabulary is that limited. It couldn't have the words to really describe it properly. I wish everyone in the world that is a civilized person anyway, not somebody at third world or something, but I wish everyone in the world could see one bomb explosion, because it'll stay with you.